I found a quote that I feel is very appropriate for today's program and the current state of world affairs, and hope that we all take an extra moment to reflect on it. A word to the nation: guard zealously your right to serve in the armed forces, for without them, there will be no other rights to guard. President John F. Kennedy. Brigadier General Ryans II enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1988 and was commissioned in 1995 as an infantry officer. His over 35 years of military experience includes multiple combat deployments throughout the Middle East and command assignments at every level to include company, battalion, regimental, and installation recruiting regions. Significant staff assignments include Principal Deputy Legislative Assistant to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Senior Military Assistant to the Secretary of Navy, and Military Fellow at the Council of Foreign Relations. Brigadier General Ryan II currently serves the Commanding General, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, and the Western Recruiting Region. Please join me in an extremely warm Club 33 Rotary welcome to Brigadier General Ryans II.
All right, so good luck for you. Look, this is one piece of paper. All right, so just one piece of paper, and I usually write down notes like this to protect you from me, because I will just talk because I get excited about some of these things I get to talk about. So I am pleased and honored to speak to you for what I was told is the salute to the military with the San Diego Rotary Club 33. I heard him made the big announcement, 10th largest out of 33,000, I think there is. I mean, that's kind of like, that's legit, man. I mean, you are like for real. You know, that is pretty good. But I will tell you, I've come to expect this kind of civic involvement in my time in San Diego County, because it's something unusual that I've never seen before. I've had the pleasure to go to different places and see different things, and there's a different nature of interconnectedness between the citizens in San Diego County and our military service, and it's exemplary. I mean, it should be recognized that it's different. I mean, I know I've been stationed a couple other places where the reason why the community gets along with you is because they are you, right? You know, if you've been like me and spent most of my career stationed in Jacksonville, North Carolina, everybody outside the gate was either the spouse, the former spouse, the child, the mother, the father of a Marine in some way, shape, or form. But here you have something that's a little bit different, where there are sectors of our community here that don't necessarily have the personal experience of military service, but they honor us with participating and partnering with us to do fantastic things in our community. So I just want to say, give yourself a round of applause. You're an example of that, and it matters. So Michael scared me too, right? So we met here for a few minutes, and he goes, "Hey, what are you going to talk about?" And so I was like, "Well, you know, this is veterans event, I think." But he's like, kind of looked at me. He's like, "You know, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. You can feel free to talk about like some current events or something." I was like, I don't know if that was in my notes, but I did tell him that I'll try to be brief, and I am willing to answer any questions that I'm within capability of answering. Most of our expertise, my expertise right now is in what we're doing in our recruiting and making Marines. So when he talks about the Western Recruiting Region, I have the pleasure of being in charge of all the recruiting stations, which is about 650 of them, that stretch west of the Mississippi to Alaska, Hawaii, and Guam, and even into Japan. We had an honor graduate last week who had come from Japan, from Okinawa, Japan. So we stretch out pretty far, so that's a big responsibility. As you know, the Marine Corps was one of the only services to make its mission That song that nobody stood for was the Space Force's anthem. I knew that, if y'all didn't. But they made their mission too, all right? It was about 500 people they were trying to get, but they made it. But we made our mission, and so our focus and a lot of my expertise has shifted from that. Before I did that job, I was the assistant division commander for 1st Marine Division up in Camp Pendleton. So I'm a little dated, but I am willing to answer any and all questions that you want to ask about the Marine Corps. So what do I want to talk to you about? I think I want to talk to you about what it means to me to be a veteran. And I think that's what this is about. And it's an interesting audience here. We've got a mix of, future, we have some older veterans, younger veterans, all in the room. So hopefully something from this will be applicable. I thought deeply about what's the best way to describe a veteran. Despite your time in service, despite the branch that you're in, doesn't matter what branch, what unifies us as veterans? And I boiled it down to this sentence. A veteran is the person who will go where others can't or unwilling or not willing to go, and they will do what others can't or are unwilling to do. That's what unifies us as veterans, because we all are veterans in some way, shape, or form who have served, but you may not have been the one that was there when the big one came or something. I was in the Marine Corps for a good little bit, and there was nothing going on. All right, we were just training. Then I went through 20 years of multiple, 5 deployments. 3 to Afghanistan and 2 to Iraq. But it all depends on your timing. But that's not what makes us bonded together. What bonds us together is that at the moment when we say, I'll do it, I'll go, because I know that person can't, or I'll do it, even though somebody says they won't. That's what binds us together and makes us veterans. And all of our journeys towards service start with uncertainty. And I see it regularly at MCRD. Right? So anytime, and remember, this is transferable across all services. So anytime somebody is joining, they don't know what boot camp is going to be like. They don't know if they can make it, and they don't know what's going to happen after they do. They got a rough idea, but they have they don't know. And so the first step that they take is through uncertainty. I get to watch this about 42 times a year. I get to watch a group of young Americans walk into the unexpected, because it happens on a regular basis. They don't know, specifically those who are joining the Marine Corps. But I recently read a book titled Courage is Calling by Stan Holiday. And it has helped me have a better understanding of what I believe courage is. And it's tied to what I talked about: the step to serve, the step towards uncertainty. And I'm trying to tie this to what I believe courage is. See, because we romanticize courage. And what we typically do is we always use as our exemplar, the thing that we want to be, is the hyperbolic expression of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that. I mean, we honor people who give their lives. I mean, we have our kids watch the Marvel Universe, and they're watching, everything we do is about heroes do gigantic stuff, right? But I don't think that's where courage starts. I think that courage, while we honor our heroes, is that courage starts in small steps. Doesn't start big, it starts small. And that the people that we honor as our exemplars didn't show up and go, I got some courage now. That's not how it worked. What happened is over a series of small steps, they kept developing their ability to push a little bit further and to go a little bit farther. And when the circumstances arise, they had built up a well of courage. But it starts with small steps. For many of us as service members, it starts with that first small step. I know I'm gonna go to boot camp. I have no idea if I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna sign my name on the dotted line. I don't even know where they're gonna send me, I'm in. That's courage. That's where it starts. We don't honor that sometimes. We forget, right? Because we're waiting for the super moment. But on day-to-day basis, there are opportunities for us to exercise courage. And sometimes it's stepping a little bit further. To even exhibit compassion for others, it requires courage, right? Because in those moments when you're about to do it, you're making yourself vulnerable. Courage is something that we don't think about, but is an essential component of how we navigate through our lives each and every day. And the idea of service, as we sit here and think about what we're doing and going in the armed forces and doing it, we have to recognize that even the first step is an act of courage that leads us to a lifetime of service and even to do greater things. So I tell our honor graduates, right? So I get to see the honor graduates. We usually have a platoon. If we have a graduation company of 6 platoons, we'll have 6 honor graduates. And after every graduation, we line their families up, and Sergeant Major and I are like, hey, if you want, we're gonna take a picture. We put them in the center, we put the family around them. Sergeant Major's on one end, I'm on the other, the flag's in the back. It's an awesome experience. But usually every time I get to walk up to the honor graduate, and usually when I speak to him or her, I always say this thing to them. I always say, hey, the most essential thing that you're gonna take from becoming a Marine is that you've proved to yourself that you can do something. You have proved to yourself through the accomplishment of becoming a Marine that you can face uncertainty. You can be challenged daily, not knowing what was gonna happen, and on the backside of that, you can be something and do something that's applicable outside of service. But the service affords us the opportunity to hone that skill and become strong at doing that. So I gotta tell you this story because it hit me this morning. This is totally like off script, I didn't even write this down. So I was sitting with my one of my staff members, and this is about the busiest job I ever had in my life, you know. This is legit, right? You know, and Captain Tavener, my aide, sitting in front of us, and you hooked us up this week. That was a rough one, right? That was a rough one. So we made a plan. So you gotta think we had stuff happening all weekend. We flew to Chicago, drove to Milwaukee, drove all across Wisconsin to see our recruiters out in the fleet. So we've got to fly back here. So of course we pick a flight in Chicago that's boarding at 6:30, which meant we got up at 2:30 in the morning so that we could drive and get on our 6:30 flight so that I can land here at 9:30 morning and do a full day, right? And so I'm talking to the staff member about it, and she asked me a question. This is going somewhere. She said, how do you recharge? And I thought for a moment, I was like, yeah, you know what, I don't know. I used to have a way to do it, but I don't know. So let me share you the story though, because this is how I really recharge. So we go to Weapons Field Training Battalion is at Edson Range. And the way that the Marine Corps does its boot camp, we have an event called the Crucible at the end. So at the end of boot camp, there's like this 48, 50-hour period of, hey, you only get a couple chows, you got to do these obstacles together, and at the end you're going to hike this hike, and you come up to the top of the hill, and you know once you've made it to the top of the hill, you officially have become a Marine, and we put an Eagle Globe and Anchor in your hand. And I've seen young people start crying when that happens. Some of y'all Marines out here, you know you cried. Yep, you know you did, right? But let me tell you what jazzed me up one day. So I'm standing at the top of the hill, me and a colonel, we're just standing there. We're off to the side, we're like off the side, they can't even see us. And this platoon comes marching up, and there's this young female, and I'm gonna edit it for family purposes. She's in formation though, she gets to the top of the hill, and she just goes, F yeah, F yeah, F yeah, I did it. And I was like, yeah, I'm good. I can work hard for another 4 or 5 months off of that. Because it exemplifies what I was talking about, right? What are we doing? We're not only making Marines and service members we are changing lives. And that's what service does to the person who goes ahead and do it and who goes after it. So I want to make sure we understand that the heroes that we emulate, they were courageous before the situation occurs because of moments like that, of making it to the top of the Reaper, saying I did it, means that I may be able to do it. And they build up enough of that because the first step to service is often the tiny step to a lifetime of service, of growth, and of courage, and of just pure service to your community, like I think you're exhibiting right now. Another example of this that I thought was really neat. So I'm a fan of our commercials, and it's kind of weird. It seems kind of weird, right? You know, because I like our own commercials. I'm like, I think I'm already sold, but I like our own commercials, right? And so there was a series of commercials that the Marine Corps put out about 6 years ago that illustrate this to a T, this idea of the small step turning into a lifetime of service. And if you ever look on YouTube and you want to see the commercial I'm talking about, it was a series called Battle Up. And it was a really neat commercial because in the commercial it showed this young girl and she's walking through her school and she confronts some bullies in the stairwell. Then it shows her playing rugby. And then it shows her at OCS, like fighting through the process, drill instructor yelling at her, she's going through OCS. Then it shows her in a combat scenario. And then the commercial concludes showing her in civilian clothes, handing some blankets to a homeless person. And the person who has a cool voice, right, the voice who's talking over in the commercial, says these words. He says, whatever shape the battle takes, because as long as there are battles, there will always be Marines. And what really hits me, right, is what the video that the commercial was illustrating is what many of you in this room personify. You join the military, you serve, and even when you're done doing that, it's too late. You've got it, right? You've got the bug, and you want to serve. And so you find yourself coming back in some way, shape, or form to serve the needs of others, because the battles take many different forms. We prepare ourselves for the most violent portions of battle, which is what I have prided myself on being prepared to do as an infantry officer. That's what I think I'm supposed to do, is I'm supposed to be prepared for the most violent battle. But that's not the only form of battle that we end up fighting, specifically for our veterans who, once they're done serving, they find another battle to fight. They find another way to exhibit courage. And this is borne out by the San Diego Rotary Club, because I know many of you have served. I saw many of you standing up, and I know many of you continue to serve. And stepping out into a new set of circumstances takes courage. Big things often start small. Battles take many shapes, but all require courage. A veteran is a person who will go where others can't or are unwilling to go, and will do what others can't or are unwilling to do. We honor our veterans today, but we can all serve in our own way. That's the big takeaway. We can all serve in our own way. And I'm going to quote a scripture for you, because that's what I go to for my wisdom and guidance, and it's Matthew 23:11. And in that quote, Jesus said this. He said, "But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant." I say, let us all aspire to be great. Thank you, and Semper Fidelis. I'm prepared to answer any questions. Okay, Mike looked at me, he said, stay by the mic and prepare for questions. So I am prepared. Does anybody have a question? Yes, and we'll try. Do we have mics for them? Yeah. Thank you. Yep, there's an awesome young lady around with a microphone. Okay, got it.
Thanks so much for being here, General.
Yes.
Comment and then question. First off, I've had the privilege of being in this club 17 years. We've had Chief of Naval Operations, several flag officers over these years to present. It's the best presentation I've seen by somebody in uniform in my 17 years. So now that I got that out of the way, let me ask you about your job and question you.
Okay.
Current economic environments, uncertainties, conflicts overseas, how is that affecting recruitment? Are you seeing any trends, positive or negative, over the last year or so?
So overall, the recruiting environment has become tough for all the services, and that's because of changes within our society, the lingering effects of COVID. But it's hard to say how it's universally affecting us, except in a handful of categories. We're finding it harder to find physically qualified people to join. And that's because there are significant things that used to be very rare that are now disqualifiers, such as ADHD medications or often can be disqualifiers. We have people who are just not as in good a physical shape as they normally would have been. We have a tough time getting people to pass the ASVAB because of lack of academic credibility. I mean, I go around and I'll find we've been to multiple places where I've had recruiters tell me this young person came in and had a 3.6 GPA and scored a 10 on the ASVAB. That's like out of 100, like 10. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, for the Marine Corps, we really, you can't even join our service without a waiver below 35, right? So, you can't do it, but we're running, so that's the big part. I think what you talk about with the uncertainty in the environment, I'll tell you what actually hurts us sometimes. Sometimes those who are trying to help us hurt us. So an example, I'm in Salt Lake City, we're driving down the highway. There are 4 billboards. The Marine Corps, Join the Marine Corps billboard is the 4th billboard. The first 3 are veterans and suicide, wounded warriors. I mean, it's all everything that basically describes if you have a child, they're gonna get hurt. And then the billboard comes up and says, hey, join the Marine Corps, right? No, that doesn't work. So some of it is fighting against all the goodwill gestures that people are making to try to help us, to prevent people from understanding that you're sitting in a room right now with a bunch of hard-charging young service members from a bunch of different services who would probably tell you, we're okay. I'm okay. I joined the service and I'm okay. I may not be staying in, but I'm okay. Or I may be staying in for life. I don't know, but I'm okay. And it's tough sometimes for us to get to what I call the community to explain the benefits of service, and there are a lot. Another challenge we have is explaining that to the academics that are at the high schools. The programs we want to go to as the high schools. Most and the educators, they care about who they're educating, right? And the apex of the educator is to send a kid to college. And so when my recruiter shows up, they're like, what are you doing? I mean, you're messing up the program. Except for the fact that there are significant opportunities to get college education on active duty. My son went to college for a little bit. Let's just say he didn't do so hot. He came home, joined the Marine Corps, enlisted in the Marine Corps, went to Hawaii for all 4 of his years. He was in CLB 3. He got out of the Marine Corps, decided, hey, Dad, it's not for me. Got out of the Marine Corps, GI Bill, tons of money already saved in the bank. I never had to do anything for him. He graduated magna cum laude with an IT degree from North Carolina A&T and has 2 years left of his GI Bill. So he literally told me, he goes, I don't get a job. My backup plan is I'm gonna get a master's degree. So, but that has nothing to do with me. What I'm saying is those opportunities present themselves for service members. They're gonna make their choice. Some of them will be in a position to pursue tuition assistance. Some of them will be like me. I was an enlisted Marine. Somebody walked in and said, hey, do you want to become an officer? I said, I don't know. And then I kind of changed my mind. I went for it. I got an ROTC scholarship. And I went from being like graduating bottom third of my high school class, and I got a degree in physics. So I couldn't have done that without the other things that occurred, right? The going to boot camp, learning some discipline, realizing that even though I thought it was hard to do homework, that the Marine Corps showed me that there were harder things to do. Long answer, but I wanted to kind of give you a comprehensive understanding of what the environment's like. Okay, please.
General, as an older American, I perceive that some of the Gen Z and millennials don't have the same patriotic feelings or concerns that we had. Have you found that to be true?
Yes, sir. I think here's my take on it. I think what we have to be careful about is that our Gen Z and our upcoming young people, they're fighters. We just don't necessarily agree on what we're fighting about. Right? But what I find personally is that in most of the protests that you go to, if they're participating in marches, if they're participating in whatever they're participating in, if you really sit down and ask them, why are you doing that? They believe they're protecting someone. But that's something to be admired. While it might not be aimed in the direction that we want to aim it in, I think it's something to be admired. I do think that right now, what has atrophied is an understanding of our civic responsibility and the advantages we have as a nation. And there's been an overemphasis on old wounds and mistakes that have been made. But we're a young country. And I know from firsthand what some of those mistakes that we're complaining and talking about. But as much as history can be the educator that moves us forward, we got to be careful that it isn't the prison of unforgiveness that prevents us from doing anything else. So I think our biggest challenge is, right now the young people that are out there believe that they're doing things that need to be done, but they don't understand, I think personally, the value of aiming that towards civic duty, understanding you can do both and you can grow while doing civic duty to understand a little bit further why the problems are the way that they are. I think that's my best answer.
And I think we have time for one last question.
Okay.
General, first, thank you for your service and all the other current and former military in the room. Kind of along the lines of the same question, talking about retention of your team as an employer, I'm always striving to find ways to retain my employees, and the environment is very different now than my husband and I frequently talk about. We were so thrilled to have a job. You never asked for a raise. You didn't ask for a parking space or anything like that. So, but the environment's very different. How do you retain your team members? And I sometimes am concerned when I hear that particularly the younger military individuals need to get second jobs to make ends meet and those kinds of things. So how are you tackling those issues?
No, thank you. That's a great question. Frankly, to be completely honest with you, the Marine Corps has been horrible at that for decades because we operated off of a model where it was acceptable to us to have 75% of the Marine Corps in the Marine Corps for less than 4 years. That's just the way we operated. So people would come in, and that's why we always say the three things that we've always said that we've done is make Marines win battles and provide good citizens back to the society, because it was a normal accepted model to do turnover. In the last couple of years, when General Berger, our previous commandant, came up with Force Design 2030, it ushered in some other things like Talent Management 2030, which is another way to talk about retention, which is the idea that we need to have the ratio change, the amount of service members that we retain to be higher. The first step that we did was we started missioning, in other words, telling commanders that they must talk to and communicate with all of their Marines to get Marines to stay in. That was step one. Step two was figuring out how can we start changing the options that we provide our service members to where they can feel some autonomy and understanding where they're going to go and what they're going to do. While we can't guarantee that because it's driven by mission, at least involving them in the conversation, they need to be able to see where they're going and what they're doing. The other things that we've been trying to do that are important is we understand what you're talking about with the cost and those issues. Some of those are out of the hands of the Marine Corps and are DOD problems. So for instance, the Marine Corps does not set the pay for the members of the Marine Corps. The Department of Defense and Kansas City, the people who write the checks, control that, and that's congressionally controlled. So in some ways, if we do feel that our service members need to be compensated more, it turns into a civic action to address the members of Congress to change that, because it is not within the service's power to do so. And our current commandant, and I know you've probably seen in the news that he recently had a medical emergency, and it hits me big time because he's not only my commandant, I worked for him directly for 2 years, he's like a big brother to me, and I am praying for him to recover, but he intends to continue with those initiatives, which are to take care of the Marines and put them first. He has made specific decisions about diverting money from weapons acquisition to fixing the barracks for the Marines. So he's making hard choices like that to make sure that the Marines that we have in our service live in proper housing, have the proper care, and to ensure that within our power, we're able to meet their needs to keep them in. The world is becoming more complex, and our opponents are becoming more and more technically savvy. So the Marines that we have now are already smarter than I was when I was their age, but now we need to keep them becoming smarter and smarter and smarter to handle the more technical tasks. So we can't afford to have brand new people show up and have to train them again, invest and lose them. We got to keep them and keep growing them. Last year, we made our retention goals early, and this year we're on track. Only 4 or 5 months into our retention season, we're about 70% of our goals. So this is the first time in my career that I've seen that paradigm shift to where we are retaining more in this type of environment and maintaining the standards that we're maintaining and keeping the good Marines that we have and the fact that they still want to serve. So really it's a testament to them as well. So thank you.
Jackie Robinson once said, "A life is not important except for the impact it has on other lives." And it's, I think, clear to everybody here today that you are making an impact in the biggest game of all, the game of life, for all the people that you touch with your head, your heart, your hands, and your habits, and we salute you for that. Let's give him one more big hand. General Gordon McAnally's Rotary International theme is create hope in the world. And may this coin serve as a reminder to you. That's how they do it in the military. You shake their hand and put in their hand. You see, that you, with the hope that you shared today, and I think you were very transparent. I agree with what David said. We have never had a presentation from the military, as long as I've been in the club since '94, that has been as informative, as transparent, and telling it like it is going into the future, and we salute you for that. My hope is that we can reimagine how Rotary can help develop young leaders and support the adults in their lives all around the world. So we will also be gifting to you student self-leadership in your name to the high school or high schools of your choice. Maybe we go back to Hampton High, back in Virginia, where you went, and present that to them. And I'd like to also make, so all the people in uniform that are here today, if you have a high school that you went to and you would like this same opportunity, get your phone out, hit that QR code, and we will bring this program at no charge to your high school all over the country. So we thank you for that. And Club 33, you can do the same. So General Ryans, thank you for your life of doing good service before self that was on display today right here at San Diego Rotary. I want to thank Mike Caruso, Jana McDonough, Mike Connor, and the chair of our Military Affairs Committee, Michael LaCroix. Where's Michael at? Please stand. Michael, be recognized. And all of the Military Affairs Committee, please stand. If you're on the Military Affairs Committee, please stand at this time and be recognized. Give them all a big hand. We're forever grateful for your service, and to all of you that are invited guests of the armed services, and we're forever indebted to you for all that you've done. And we want to thank your families for sharing you with our country. We do appreciate that. So also the retired members of service, including many of our beloved Rotarians that are here, would you please stand one more time? If you stood up for your song, let's see you again right now. Let's get them all up here. And as I mentioned, don't sit down yet. Don't sit down, because as I mentioned, all the uniform that I spoke to before the meeting, it would be remiss if you left here and did not shake their hands and maybe get a business card. They can help you. They've transitioned post-service into doing great service before self right here with the San Diego Rotary Club. Let's give them all one more big hand. Now, please welcome Rotarian Emeritus, Member Norbert Saunders, who will give us today's 30-second parting message and then ring the bell to adjourn the 17th meeting of our 113th year. Norbert was born and raised in Indiana before coming to San Diego in 1957 after serving in the Marine Corps during the Korea conflict. He was recruited to Club 33 in 1988 by our beloved past president, Pat Kroll. 4 years after, Norbert served as the charter president of the Mission Valley Rotary in 1984. Perhaps his greatest Rotary moment was when he and Pat, by the way, Pat Kroll turned 92 last week, on October 25th, created Cerveza Before Self. Now listen carefully. With a cooler of Coronas in the passenger seats when they drove 2 ambulances donated by San Diego Rotary deep into Mexico. On December 4, Norbert, our best dressed Rotarian, will celebrate his 93rd trip around the sun. Please welcome Norbert Saunders.
That's a pretty heavy introduction to ring the bell. Yeah. For those of us who attend this meeting regularly, this has been a special day because this is a terrific program. Yes. Yeah. Yes. You women and men of the military are making the world a better place due to your courage, sacrifice, and dedication. We are the greatest country in the world, and you are working to help keep it that way. I was going to comment on the exhilarating music and the color guard, but I'll do so in absentia, right? So we'll see you next year, and this meeting is adjourned.